The water was still dark when the call came down from the Combat Information Center. 3 contacts, bearing 270, no transponders, no flags, speed climbing. On the bridge of the USS Mason, the officer of the deck had been watching a quiet ocean 30 seconds earlier, a steady course through international waters, the kind of morning that passed without incident 100 times a year on sea lanes like this one. Then the tactical display told a different story, and quiet mornings have a way of ending without warning. The contacts were small, too small for patrol craft, too fast for anything working a legitimate route. They were running parallel for a moment, then they began spreading, each one drifting into a slightly different angle relative to the destroyer's track. That spreading was the detail that mattered. Debris drifts together, lost boats wander. These contacts were moving with intention. Range 12 nautical miles, speed increasing, no response to identification queries. The watch team did not need a briefing to understand what they were looking at. The pattern was old and well documented. 3 boats, 3 angles, 1 target. Split the attention of whoever is on the bridge, create multiple problems at once, then rush the gap before the response can form. It had worked against merchant ships for years. Slow hulls, small crews, no military training, nobody to call for help until it was already too late. This was not a merchant ship. The USS Mason was an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, nearly 9,000 tons, built to operate in contested environments against adversaries far more sophisticated than 3 open boats on a calm sea. But the crew understood something that outsiders sometimes missed. Size and firepower are not the same thing as control. Control comes from procedure, and procedure had already started. At 5:18, the long-range optical system slewed west and locked on. The image came back sharp enough to count men. 10 on the lead boat, others crouched toward the center line, equipment under canvas near the stern. One man near the bow had his arm raised, pointing forward. Another appeared to be filming with a phone. No flag, no registration numbers, no distress signal. The first radio call went out on the International Maritime Frequency. Unidentified vessels, this is a United States Navy warship operating in international waters. You are approaching at high speed. Alter course immediately. The frequency returned static. The boats kept accelerating. Speed 18 knots, then 24, then 28. What happened next in the Combat Information Center was not dramatic. No one slammed a fist on a console. No one started shouting. The surface warfare coordinator updated the track labels and began building the timeline. The officer of the deck made the call to the captain. The captain arrived on the bridge and looked at the plot the way someone looks at a problem they have already rehearsed solving. Calm, methodical, deliberate. There is something that stays with people who have stood a watch on a warship, military or civilian, in a moment when everything is still technically manageable but could become something else inside of 2 minutes. That particular kind of focused quiet. The feeling of being ahead of the situation by just enough, knowing that staying ahead is the entire job. Most people will never experience that specific weight, but most people have felt some version of it. A moment when the wrong decision would cost something real, and the right decision required holding steady when every instinct said to react. That was the bridge of the Mason at 5:20. Force protection teams moved to assigned stations without running. Sailors stepped onto the bridge wings with binoculars. Cameras went to continuous recording. Every radar sweep, every bearing change, every transmitted warning was logged with a timestamp. The ship's whistle was made ready. Small arms teams took their positions with controlled spacing. The second warning went out at 5:21. Unidentified vessels, you are standing into danger. Alter course now. Do not approach this warship. No answer. Range dropped below 9 miles, then 8. The lead skiff switched on its forward lights. 2 bright beams cut across the dark water and reflected off the gray hull of the Mason. It was a gesture, a signal, a way of saying they had seen the ship. They knew exactly what it was, and they were not turning away. On the bridge, the captain watched it without expression. Report. 3 contacts. No flag, no response to hails. Speed 31 knots. Closest point of approach inside 3 miles and decreasing. Maintain course, log everything. Hail again. The third warning went out, and for a moment something seemed to shift. The lead boat moved 5 degrees, but not away, toward the Mason's starboard side. The surface warfare coordinator marked it immediately. Captain, lead contact maneuvering with intent. At 6 nautical miles, the gap between the boats and the destroyer looked wide on a chart. At 31 knots, 6 miles disappears in less than 12 minutes. The pirates were counting on that compression. They were betting that closing distance fast enough would create the kind of pressure that forced mistakes, an overreaction, a sudden turn, a break in discipline that gave them the opening they needed. They had chosen the wrong ship to test that theory. At 5:23, the contacts were close enough to see without optics from the bridge. Low hulls, hard wakes, men on deck. Skiff 1 was driving toward the Mason's starboard side. Skiff 2 had opened wider. shaping an angle toward the destroyer's projected bow. Skiff 3 held slightly behind, positioned to adjust if the first two forced a maneuver. Range to lead, contact 5.4 nautical miles, speed 31 knots. Second contact, 5.8, crossing angle. Third contact, 6.2, trail position. The captain spoke without taking his eyes off the display. Continue hails, full readiness, do not escalate unless ordered. On the starboard bridge wing, a lookout fixed binoculars on the lead boat. 10 men, some standing, some crouched near the center line. One man with what appeared to be a long object against his shoulder, another waving the driver forward. The report came in flat and steady. Bridge, starboard lookout, weapons visible on lead skiff, personnel exposed forward. The Mason transmitted again. Unidentified vessels, this is a United States Navy warship. Your actions are unsafe. Turn away immediately. Static answered. Then, for half a second, something that sounded like laughter broke across the open frequency. Then silence. The boats kept closing. At 5:25, 5 short blasts sounded from the ship's whistle, the international signal for danger. The sound carried across the water with enough force to roll over the engine noise of the skiffs. Every man on those boats heard it. Not one of them slowed. The Mason shifted to a higher defensive posture, not because the pirates were powerful, but because small boats at short range compress the margin for error in ways that require preparation. A skiff can carry explosives, boarding equipment, armed men who have made a decision that cannot be undone once they are alongside. Every possibility had to be accounted for until the threat was neutralized. Skiff 2 made its first serious move at 5:27. It turned sharply and drove toward the Mason's bow, angling for a crossing that would force a reaction. If the destroyer turned away, Skiff 1 would have a cleaner run down the starboard side. If it slowed, Skiff 3 could close from behind. The Mason did not turn. The Mason did not slow. The captain understood the game. The pirates needed the ship to flinch. They needed disorder. They needed the Americans to give them a rhythm they could exploit. They did not get it. Closest point of approach on Skiff 2, under 3 miles. Time to closest point, 6 minutes. Log the unsafe maneuver. Hail again. Skiff 2, you are crossing the bow of a United States Navy warship. Turn away now. No answer. At 5:29, all 3 boats shifted formation simultaneously. Skiff 1 moved wider toward the starboard quarter. Skiff 2 pressed harder toward the bow. Skiff 3 broke from its trail and began angling left, trying to pull the watch team's attention across a wider arc. Captain, all 3 contacts maneuvering tactically. Recommend classify as coordinated hostile approach. The captain did not answer immediately. He watched the numbers. 4 nautical miles, 3.7, 3.5. The sun was beginning to break the horizon, throwing pale orange across a sea that looked almost peaceful from a distance. Almost. At 5:30, the lead skiff crossed inside 3 nautical miles. The captain's voice stayed level. Prepare next warning measure. At 5:31, Skiff 1 crossed inside 2 nautical miles, the line where suspicious intent became a proximity threat. Launch the helicopter. On the flight deck, the MH-60 Romeo Seahawk came alive. Rotors turned slow, then faster, building into a low, heavy thunder that vibrated through the stern. The deck crew moved in the controlled crouch that comes from practice, hands signaling through the rotor wash, bodies angled away from the blast. 2 pilots forward, 1 sensor operator behind them. Every system already warming before the aircraft left the deck. At 5:32, the Seahawk lifted clean, banked left, and moved toward the 3 skiffs at low altitude. Not directly overhead, not aggressively close, just close enough to be undeniable. From the waterline, 3 boats can hide behind speed, angle, and the confusion of multiple approach vectors. From the air, there is no hiding. Every man on deck, every movement near the bow, every course change is visible and recorded. The sensor operator brought the forward-looking infrared onto Skiff 1. 10 men, driver, equipment amidships, no flag, no compliance. Warship, Seahawk. Lead skiff confirmed, non-compliant. Multiple personnel visible forward. Recording. Copy. Maintain safe orbit. The helicopter slid through the sky at 300 feet, holding a position ahead and above the formation. On Skiff 3, 2 men looked up. One pointed at the aircraft. Another stepped back from the bow. The boat's wake shortened slightly, suggesting a brief reduction in throttle. Skiff 1 did not slow. The Mason transmitted again. Unidentified vessels, this is a United States Navy warship. You are approaching a restricted defensive zone. Turn away now. Failure to comply will be treated as a threat. The radio stayed quiet. The lead skiff kept closing. At 5:33, range dropped to 1.5 nautical miles. The security team on the starboard side watched through optics with the particular stillness of people who have rehearsed their role enough times that waiting feels like preparation rather than inaction. They were not there to start anything. They were there to make sure nothing started that the ship could not immediately control. At 5:34, Skiff 2 made another hard push toward the bow. Closest point of approach under 1,000 yards. The captain answered without hesitation. Sound warning, spotlight on the crossing boat. Keep recording. 5 short blasts again. Louder now at this range, sharper. The optical systems fixed on Skiff 2. The message was simple. Turn away. Skiff 2 hesitated. Its bow wavered. Its wake broke pattern. For 3 seconds, it looked like the driver was reconsidering. Then Skiff 1 surged forward again, and the hesitation ended. The lead boat was inside 1,000 yards, still driving toward the Mason's starboard side, engine noise rising above the water. The Seahawk slid into a wider orbit above it, camera locked. From the air, the geometry was obvious. The lead skiff was trying to reach the destroyer's defensive envelope before the other 2 boats lost their nerve. Seahawk to warship, lead skiff continuing inbound, no compliance. Bridge, recommend final warning, transmit. Lead vessel, this is a United States Navy warship. You are closing a protected naval vessel. Turn away immediately. This is your final warning. For one breath, the water held still. Then the lead skiff turned 5 degrees inward. Not away, inward. On the Mason's bridge, no one spoke for a half second. The movement said everything the pirates had refused to say on the radio. They were still testing the line. And they had just run out of line to test. Execute non-lethal warning measures. The Seahawk dropped slightly lower and shifted ahead of the skiff's path. Its spotlight struck the water directly in front of the lead boat. The Mason's loudspeaker thundered across the open sea. Turn away now! The skiff bounced hard across the blast, men grabbing whatever was fixed to the deck. One near the bow stepped back, another crouched lower. The driver kept the throttle forward. Range 900 yards, 800, 700. At 5:37, Skiff 1 made the mistake that ended the attack. It turned inward again. A small correction, just 5 degrees of rudder. On open water, it looked like almost nothing. Inside the Combat Information Center, it closed the last remaining gap between aggressive approach and hostile action. Lead skiff turning in, range 600 yards. Helm, stand by. Right 5 degrees rudder, steady on ordered course. The order was deliberate and precise. The Mason shifted through the water and built a heavy rolling wake off the starboard side. Not dramatic, not reckless. The kind of controlled seamanship that does not announce itself. The kind that only becomes visible when a small boat drives into what follows. Skiff 1 drove straight into it. The bow lifted, then dropped hard. Spray blew across the men on deck. The driver tried to correct, but the second wave caught the hull at an angle. The boat slapped down sideways, losing speed in a violent lurch. Men grabbed rails, engine covers, anything secured to the deck. One near the bow stumbled backward, another went flat against the floorboards. No shot fired, no weapon deployed. Physics, and the knowledge of how to use a 9,000-ton hull in open water. Seahawk report. Lead skiff has lost speed. Personnel unstable on deck. Still no compliance. From above, the structure of the attack was collapsing in real time. Skiff 1 had been the tip of the formation. Once it lost momentum, the geometry fell apart. Skiff 2 saw it immediately. The boat that had been pushing toward the bow began to hesitate, throttle up, then back, then up again. That kind of indecision is its own answer. The crew on board no longer believed in the plan. Skiff 3 made a different calculation and tried to widen out toward open water. Too late. The Seahawk was already above it. The Mason had the track. The picture was complete from 3 different angles simultaneously. At 5:39, the loudspeaker reached across the water again. Stop your engines. Keep your hands visible. Do not approach this warship. At 5:40, Skiff 1's engine noise dropped. 31 knots became 12, then 6, then almost nothing. The lead boat drifted in the churned water off the Mason's starboard side. Several men raised their hands halfway. Not a full surrender, but no longer the posture of men who believed they had the advantage. Lead skiff slowing. Engines still running. Warn again. Cut your engines now. 3 seconds. Then the engine note went flat. Skiff 1 went quiet. Skiff 2 turned hard away from the bow line. The maneuver was late and looked exactly like what it was, a formation that had lost its center. 3 boats only function as a swarm when all 3 stay committed to the same moment. Once the lead stops, the other 2 become isolated problems instead of coordinated pressure. Launch RHIB-1. RHIB-2, stand by. At 5:42, the Mason's rigid hull inflatable dropped into the water and moved away from the destroyer at a controlled angle. Not a charge. An approach designed to keep the stopped skiff contained while the Seahawk maintained pressure on Skiff 3 from above. By 5:44, Skiff 2 had reduced speed. By 5:45, Skiff 3 was slowing under the helicopter's shadow, its driver finally understanding that the orbit overhead was not going to break off. At 5:49, the first boarding team came alongside Skiff 1. The coxswain held the RHIB at a safe angle. Clear commands, one man at a time, hands visible. Every second logged by body cameras, shipboard optics, and the Seahawk overhead. The deck of the lead skiff was crowded, wet, and unstable. Loose equipment underfoot, fuel containers near the stern, lines and bags across the center. The men on board kept their hands raised as the boarding team worked through the vessel with the kind of methodical quiet that only comes from having rehearsed the procedure more times than they could count. No celebration on the Mason's bridge. No announcement over the internal circuit. Just reports. Boarding team on Skiff 1. 10 personnel controlled. Searching deck. Skiff 2 compliant. Skiff 3 engines coming down. At 5:56, Skiff 2 was brought under control. At 6:02, Skiff 3 finally cut engines. The Seahawk completed one more full orbit before confirming what the Mason's radar had already shown. All three skiffs stopped. No further approach. The captain looked at the plot. Secure the defensive envelope. Maintain overwatch until transfer. The sun was fully above the horizon now. The same water the pirates had used to close the distance was carrying their boats slowly in the opposite direction, contained and watched. The shipping lane remained open. The destroyer had not changed course. No American sailor had been hurt. No pirate boat had touched the hull. 30 men had started the morning believing that speed and numbers could force a reaction from one American warship. What they found instead was a crew that had already thought through every move they were going to make before they made it. A crew that had been ahead of them from the moment the first radar return appeared on the edge of the surface picture. The final report was direct. 3 unidentified vessels had approached a U.S. Navy warship at high speed in international waters. Multiple warnings had been ignored. The vessels had maneuvered tactically. The Mason had launched a helicopter, deployed boarding teams, neutralized the approach, and controlled all 3 boats without a single shot fired. No damage, no retreat, no loss of control over the situation at any point. There is a version of that morning where things go differently, where the captain hesitates at the wrong moment, or the boarding team rushes before the lead skiff is stopped, or the Seahawk launches too late to change the geometry. Most people who have ever been responsible for a team under pressure know what that version feels like from the inside. That specific second where one decision separates a controlled outcome from something that ends badly. The Mason's crew never gave the pirates that second, which is worth thinking about because the difference between those two versions of that morning was not firepower. It was who stayed ahead of the situation longer.